What's going on, everyone? And welcome to another episode of Writing Friction. And as always, today's guest is pretty cool and not from, but living in New Jersey. Everyone say hello to Margarita Montimore. How are you?
Hello, I am great. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Is it still snowing there? My mother texts me every day.
No, it's starting to melt, but then we have like additional snowstorms that are like threatening and threatening. And of course, like our salt is coming like literally the day after the worst of it is
Mhm.
supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So far it's held off, but there's still enough for our dog to chew
Oh,
on the ice
oh
and
yeah.
kind of slip around and have fun. And
Yeah, well, we have the puppy the podcast has a puppy. Her name is Reba, but she's in the crate because I've been trying to have her out during the podcast, but she
Mhm.
chews on everything, not just snow. But it doesn't snow in California, so that's why I live
What
here.
breed?
She's a mini English bulldog.
Oh,
Oh,
cute.
she's the cutest friggin' thing ever. Yeah. But she usually chills on my lap, and then she'll jump, and then it's game over, and then it's like I can't do this.
Oh, yeah, my dog's 70 pounds. If she chilled on my lap, my legs would go numb.
There it is. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. So you are East Coast all the way, right? You grew up. You're originally from. You said you were born in New York.
Oh, I was actually born in Soviet Ukraine, but I mean,
Not New York.
came
Yeah.
over, yeah, but I mean, I came over, at 4 when
Yeah.
we
Okay.
immigrated. So I grew up in Brooklyn, and I used to talk like this
Yeah. Yeah.
because we lived
Yeah.
in Bensonhurst. And then yeah, I mean, I've lived mostly on the East Coast, college in Boston, and then other than a like quick year and a half stint in London because why not? I moved back to New York. So yeah, I've pretty much been on this side of the country, but it's just how it's worked out. But you certainly, yeah, like I'll always feel like a Brooklyn girl at heart, I think, just because that's what's been ingrained in me.
Yeah. What neighborhood in Brooklyn?
Oh gosh, well, we lived when we first came to America, we lived in Crown Heights, and
Yeah.
then we moved to Bensonhurst, and then I spent most time, and my mother is still in Marine Park, if you know that area, not far
Yeah.
from
Yeah. Yeah.
Sheepshead Bay. So it's like deep Brooklyn. It's
Yeah.
not cool Brooklyn. I remember when Brooklyn was embarrassing, and
So do I.
when it was like the bridge and tunnel, like it was not cool at all. And I got to live there because I also lived in South Park Slope during the most of the time that I was there, kind of on my own.
Yeah.
And I saw it go from this place where people would kind of like, you're from Brooklyn, to like super hipster, everything's artisanal, like what is going on here?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
wild place. I mean, my mother's from the Bronx. I was born in Queens, but her
Mhm.
father is from Brooklyn. So growing up as a kid, I grew up in North Jersey. He would take us, my sister and I, into Williamsburg. And this is,
Mhm.
1990,
Yeah.
1989. And he would just to show us Jewish people,
Yeah. Yeah, we were those people when we
I'm
first came
Jewish,
to
right? So like,
America. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. He was like, these are our people. And he would, I'm a kid, you have no idea. And if he were alive today and he ordered, a latte from a coffee place in Williamsburg, he'd be like, "What the fuck is going on?" Yeah, interesting. But you say you were born in Ukraine, correct?
Yeah.
Are
Yeah,
you
but
both your
I'm
both your?
Russian.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Russian for all intents and purposes. So, like, it's when it was the USSR, so it was one big place.
Mhm.
So I consider myself Russian just because my family is like Romanian and all over kind of Eastern Europe, but yes,
Yeah.
Soviet.
So growing up, I mean, obviously that was a different time in the world, and I don't even know the travel restrictions nowadays. But did you ever have a chance growing up to travel there?
Never.
Yeah.
No. No, it was so hard for us to get out that we pretty much
Yeah.
did not
Yeah.
want to take any risks. And,
Wow.
it's just, yeah, it's, we still have some family like in Moldova and different parts of Russia, but someday perhaps. But yeah, I mean, because my late father, he actually put in permission. They filed for visas. It was him and his parents, and it took 10 years. And during the 10 years, because we came over on refugee visas, during that time he met my mother. I was born. His parents both died. So when the visas came through, my mother and I took the visas that were meant for his
Oh
parents, and we were
wow.
able to come over. Yeah, so it was yeah, it was pretty wild. And I know we were very lucky to
Yeah.
end up here.
So when your family landed within the boroughs of New York City, were your parents, was that part of, was there a community that you landed in, a Russian, Ukrainian, Eastern European? Was that part of your upbringing?
Actually, the community so we immigrated through Italy. Since we came over as refugees, we were embraced by we were part of the Jewish community and actually part of the Hasidic community.
We love them, everybody.
So we
Because
kind of
everybody hates us, we love everyone else.
and because we had the choice, Israel or America, and
Mm.
chose America. So that kind of was the transition. And I mean, that, so it was kind of like two culture shocks. There was the America, new language, culture shock, and then the Hasidic community itself is very, very, very intense. And then after a few years, because it was rough in
Yeah.
Crown Heights, then going from that to Bensonhurst, which is very Italian. And I mean, I loved it. I like, to the point where I know in school once I like told everybody I was Italian. I just like adopted the Italian heritage for
Oh
myself.
yeah, it's like
So
North Jersey, the same thing. Everyone's
yeah,
Italian and Jewish. Yeah.
but we definitely had Russian, my parents had Russian friends because they were involved in like the community centers. They would perform. They were both singers, and
Oh,
so they
awesome.
were always rehearsing. My mom played the piano and sang, and my dad was a singer, an opera singer. So every time we'd go to parties, my parents didn't believe in babysitters, so I would go to these big Russian parties. They'd be
Yeah.
playing piano like all night and singing, and just the life of the party. And I'd be there with my little VC Andrews books reading, and oh, if I hear Fiddler on the Roof one more time, or oh, Barbara Streisand again, okay. But of course, like, I loved it too.
Yeah, yeah. My mother used to take me, instead of getting a babysitter on Wednesday, the bowling nights with all her friends. She would just take me, and they would shove us, literally kids, in the bar area. They would fence it off, and people just smoking cigarettes, drinking Bud Lights, and kids running underneath the pool tables while their mothers bowled.
Oh my gosh,
Different
it's
world.
awesome.
Yeah, just a different world.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, you mentioned some books. You're reading some books. This is where I kind of get to what brought you to writing. I'm
Mhm.
assuming you were a reader your whole life. Were you writing at a young age too?
Yes, I was. I remember the funny thing is, so my mom still brags about this poem I wrote when I was 9 years old
Is it on the fridge
called,
still?
I'm sorry?
Is it on the fridge still?
Oh gosh, I think my mother still has it in a drawer somewhere. I would not be surprised. And it was called humbly War and Peace. So I certainly, even as a 9-year-old aspiring poet, I had some lofty ambitions. For me, it was, as a kid, it was more diaries. I was like 6 or 7 years old. We were in a stationery store, and I forced my parents to buy me this Hello Kitty diary with a lock, so I could keep all my thoughts private.
You said Hello Kitty.
Oh, Hello Kitty. Yes, I
So,
still have
I mean, I thought Hello Kitty started like 7 years ago. Hello Kitty's been around forever.
it. Yeah.
I had
Oh,
no
yes.
idea.
Yes. I
Okay.
mean, definitely as far back as the 80s, which is, yeah, when I kind of began my burgeoning career as a writer. Yeah, so it was a lot of diaries, a lot of, a little bit of poetry, and then moved into short stories once I got kind of later in elementary school. And then high school, really kind of, that's when things took off. And
Yeah. So I'm assuming you went into college with the ideas of wanting to be a writer, or were you pursuing that goal?
it, believe it or not, yes, I actually was looking for schools with a creative writing major. So because I really had practical career, a career ladder in mind, that that those successful, lucrative creative writing jobs, you graduate and everybody's knocking down your door wanting to
Yep.
give you six-figure salaries for creative writing. No, but I loved it so much. I knew that this is, there was nothing else that I felt so passionate about. Of course, I loved reading, so it's like, okay, but I don't want to be an English major. Like, no, I'm young enough and passionate enough to really go for what I love, and then I'll figure out kind of the rest of it. And it wasn't until my senior year of college that I was like, I really don't know what I'm gonna do now. I've had
Gotta
like
love
the
being 20,
best
right?
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but it was great to, despite my father wanting me to go into law or medicine, being able to just
Of
fully immerse
course.
myself into what I really loved.
Well, I mean that seems to be the children of of immigrants. It's always they want their kids to be, if they're going to America, they have to be the best possible thing in America: the doctor, the lawyer, the attorney, the surgeon. Yeah, no, I mean, I,
Oh yeah.
I wish I had parents that were like that. My parents were not like that. They were kind of like, all right, we'll see you later.
Well, it was a good balance because my father was the really strict. I would get a 97 on a test and
Yeah,
he'd be like, "Where are the other 3 points?" It was like
yeah,
that kind of family. But
yeah.
then my mother would be like, "You're a unicorn. You can be whatever you want to be. You want to write, you go write." And so it was a good kind of push and pull. Like, so it made me grow up kind of with a sense of, okay, being pragmatic and being self-sufficient and hardworking is important, but
Definitely,
dreaming and
definitely.
having crazy ideas and really, going for whatever those wild, just kind of think of whatever you want to do and just try to pursue it. Like, my parents' dream was to come to America and they did it.
Yeah.
So why can't I kind of come up with my own crazy dreams to fulfill?
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're getting two equal forces, but two different things. Where your
Mhm.
father's, not the disciplinarian, but the person who's kind of driving you to do better. And you
Yeah.
said your mother's kind of like, well, you could also do anything.
Yes.
So it seemed like two equal positive forces in your life. That's great to hear.
Yeah, I mean, as a grown up, I see it from a very kind of much rosier, like
Of
what a great
course.
balanced upbringing. When I was going through it and I was the angsty teen, of course, it felt like, a tug of war and
Yeah.
just, oh, like full of conflict. But yes, I definitely appreciate it now that I can look back on it.
Yeah, and growing up as a city kid, I grew up in the suburbs, but New York
Mhm,
City was always there. My father worked in Manhattan. I
mhm,
was in New York twice a week, but I
mhm.
never lived, in the concrete jungle.
Yeah.
So yeah, growing up, I mean, all the city kids I know, especially New York kids from like the 80s and 90s, there's a toughness. You got to just get shit done. It doesn't make no one's giving you anything. You kind of just gotta go forward with what you got.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's funny because I was a city kid, but my parents were also really, really overprotective.
Ah, yeah,
So I wasn't allowed to ride the subway
yeah,
until I was like 16 or some
yeah.
crazy age. So even though we lived in Brooklyn, I went to school from 7th through 12th grade on the Upper East Side.
Oh,
It was
sure.
like a 2 hour
Ugh,
ride on this
hey,
like private bus my parents got for me. So I had a 2 hour commute from the time I was like 12 years old. It was insane.
brutal. So,
But then
yeah,
at the same time, having science homework that required me to go to the metropolitan, well, art homework that I had to go to the Met for, and Museum of Natural History, I had to do like an ecology project by going to an exhibit there. And I mean, yeah, just going out to lunch and seeing a Woody Allen movie being shot a block away.
of
And
course,
of
yeah.
course, it was like that was amazing just seeing and just also kind of the diversity that I'm an immigrant, and growing up I had friends that were also immigrants or biracial from different
Yeah, of
cultures, and
course.
it was so fascinating to me, like just to share our stories. And I think kind of that's where that sense of storytelling really started to emerge, just that like I want to know what your story is, and tell me about like your background and your culture, and just kind of looking at what makes an individual who they are and what makes them different and
Hmm.
exciting.
Yeah. So you're growing up, you're living in New York, you're not living in the movie Kids, apparently. Um,
You know what? I'm not, but I swear to God, that was the theme for our senior yearbook. That was yes, it was so messed up. I
that
know.
movie
Yeah.
fucked me. I saw that
Oh my
movie
gosh.
when you should not. I saw that. I was probably, I mean, I don't know what your age you are, but I'm 33. I saw that movie when I was probably like 13.
Yeah, I was older when I saw it, and it still
And
messed me up
that
too. Yeah.
I mean, but speaking about how powerful art can be,
Yes.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, what a yeah. So all right, so you didn't live in that movie. Good to
No.
know. Okay, so you go to college. You're studying creative writing, but
Yes.
you didn't immediately become a writer, correct?
No, I mean, I wrote so much in college, but when I was graduating, I really, yeah, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I thought, okay, I do know I want to see more of the world. I had the option of either staying in Boston, going back to New York, and kind of starting, looking for a job in publishing, because that seemed like the most natural extension. But I thought, I'm not going to get a lot of chances to do really spontaneous, crazy things. And so I got a work permit. I never even visited England before in my life, but I moved there. And I
Why
ended
not?
up living there for 6 months. Did not know a single person. I didn't have a job. I had 1 week booked in a hostel, and money that I saved up from working summer jobs in cash that I exchanged for pounds at the airport. That's how completely foolish I was. And I just had to make it
Everyone
work.
listening, pay attention to that.
Never do that. And don't
Ever,
take all your money in cash. Oh
ever.
gosh.
Nope.
There's so many
And but
horrible
always
ways
keep
that it could.
always keep a little bit of American money on you. Not a lot, just
Yeah.
a little bit. Always, anywhere in the world, American people will always take a US dollar.
Oh my gosh, it was crazy. Yeah. And so I did kind of, I got a job there. I worked in headhunting, and
Can
then
you
came
describe
back.
headhunting for people?
Headhunting, it's recruitment, but where you lie and pretend to be other people so that you poach people from other companies. Like the whole philosophy is that the best candidates for jobs are already in other jobs. So yeah, so I had like fake names that I would use, and it kind of was tough because I was American and I couldn't do a British accent. So sometimes people would be like, wait, you're Audrey, but you sound just like that girl Eve I talked to last week. And it's like, oh, that's my colleague. Um,
Uh,
yeah. And, but it was fun. I had to hustle and kind of challenge myself in different ways. And I got to see a lot of the UK and Europe in the process just by being over there. And then I came back to New York a few months after 9/11 happened.
mhm.
So that was an interesting transition.
I mean, we all have 9/11 stories. So you were
Yeah.
not in America when 9/11 happened.
I was in London, and I woke up and I watched everything happen live on TV,
Sure.
just in a total daze. And then this is the craziest thing. So my father at the time worked in construction, and he worked downtown in Manhattan. And my mother, so one of the ways that we communicated, this is before smartphones, before WhatsApp. So we had like calling cards, or we could talk online. But my parents didn't use instant messenger. They played this online poker game, and it was called Pig Poker. And that's how we would chat online. But
Wow.
that was like our bonding was always through gambling. We would go to Atlantic City, and like those were our little trips. We'd play poker together and blackjack, all that. So we would keep in touch while I was abroad through Pig Poker. And when 9/11 happened, all the phone lines were down,
Mhm.
but the Pig Poker chat rooms were still up.
Wow.
And that's how I was able to connect with my parents and find out that everybody was okay, everybody was safe. And it was just such a relief to like have that lifeline with them, and so surreal, just all of it. So yeah, so coming back to that was just
Yeah, I
on
mean,
top of
yeah,
having.
my
Yeah.
father worked in the trade center from 1990 to 2000.
Oh
He
wow,
worked on
wow.
the 89th floor.
Mm.
And he my whole life I've been I was in the top of that building half a dozen times.
Wow.
And I was a freshman in high school.
Hmm.
Morning of 9/11, I was 15 miles west of Manhattan. If you drove out of I'm from Mawa. If you
Yeah.
drive out on the Route 17 and you
Hmm.
go up to Ramsey, Lower Manhattan is literally a postcard in your face.
Oh my
And
gosh.
my mother, my brother had just started working for American Express,
Hmm.
maybe 6 months prior, and
Wow.
it happened. Someone told me we were watching it on the news in the first period. Second period, my mother couldn't get in touch with my brother. No one knew where he was. She
Mm.
came, literally dragged me out of the classroom. Kids were, I mean, again,
Oh,
everyone has their 9/11 story. It's just,
yeah.
where were you on that day? But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that affected everyone,
Oh god.
obviously.
Because
But
it
yeah, but
just
I
felt like.
remember going to a month after 9/11. going to the what now no longer exists, the Roseland Ballroom for a
Oh
con.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a
The
lot of shows
Roseland.
there, and I saw
Yeah.
MXPX and Newfound Glory a month
Uh-huh.
after 9/11, and my father came and chaperoned us. I remember. I mean, yeah, it
Mm,
was a crazy time. Yeah, obviously, yeah,
yeah. But I will say, because I remember at the time thinking like, oh my gosh, like life will never be the same. Life will never get back to normal. And moving back to New York, and it was difficult on so many levels,
yeah,
but seeing life actually resume and seeing like how it was rebuilt, like there was something about it that was so incredible, just to see the resilience and to see everybody keep going, and like to see it all kind of firsthand, like living in the city, like it made me feel just so gratified to kind
yeah.
of be one little tiny puzzle piece in this huge mosaic,
Yeah, it gives hope for humanity. It always does. People
Yeah,
really can come together.
yeah.
All right. So yeah, so you moved back to New York, obviously at an interesting time. Why did you move back to New York? What was the next step in your life?
Well, my visa was running out, my work
That'll
permit
do
was
it. Yeah.
running out, and I just, headhunting was not a lifelong career. So I needed to move back. My family, my friends, pretty much most of my kind of support network was in New York, and I was very fortunate. So the summers in that I was in college, I worked at an insurance company. The head of the company was a family friend, and he said, I know you want to work with books, I know you want to work in publishing, but right now might be tough for you to find a job, so you have a job here anytime you need it. So the fact that I was able to come back to New York and have work and start saving up money while I was, trying to write, trying to get my foot in the door with publishing, it was everything. It was not at all a glamorous job. Working at an insurance company is exactly what you will imagine it is. And but I had to do something,
Yeah.
and fortunately I was it took a year and a half actually, but I did find a job with a literary agency. So
All right. All right. Well, two questions. The
yeah,
first question. When you were doing the insurance job,
yeah.
was it the kind of thing where right before work, right after work, right during when you can? I mean, were you writing it all during that time?
It was not as much as I wanted to.
Yeah.
No, I actually, that was the thing. I thought, oh, well, when you have a boring job, I'll just write loads and loads of novels. But there is something about being in a cubicle under those, neon lights that just sucks all of the creativity
The toaster
out of
oven.
you. I was still blogging. Live journal was a thing then, and so was online dating. So I was yeah,
Still
just
is.
kind
Trust
of,
me.
yeah. I was just kind of discovering that world. So I still kind of kept busy, tried to keep the creative juices flowing in some regards, but not writing fiction so much.
I've always wanted to start a podcast called Tinder 1.0, and it only will involve the people who were there from the Genesis, like me, who was like one of the first people, and still all these years later are still on the app.
Oh, nice. The
That would be
OGs of
that's the next
Tinder.
podcast. Yeah, Tinder 1.0. All right, cool. Yeah, so you do the insurance thing,
Yeah,
and then you said you got a job at a literary agency.
yeah,
I'm new to the writing world. I'm new
sure.
to literary agents. I'm new to their assistants. I'm new
Hmm.
to all the things. Were you excited about that job? I mean,
Thrilled,
no.
thrilled. Oh, I was so excited because
Okay,
I
yeah,
worked for an agent in high school. So the high school I went to we had internships our senior year of high school. So we were able to actually like get a little preview into what your career might look like. So I interned with a literary agent. I mean, she worked out of her Upper East Side apartment, but I already had that experience and I loved it so much. And I knew how tough I was told like 200 people applied for this job. And it wasn't even being an assistant to this agent, it was being her second
yeah,
assistant,
yeah,
because she was in the business for so long,
yeah.
and there was just so much to do. So I could not be more thrilled.
Interesting. I don't, you can tell us how long you did that job, but
Mhm,
for me, when I was querying my first book last year,
mhm,
again, I hadn't. I- I'm from the music world, so the music
mhm.
world, it's just it's as DIY as you can get. If you want something done, you fucking shove the CD in front of someone's face and hope they listen to it.
Right.
I approached the literary world the same way, and I learned a very, very tough lesson that
Mhm,
a they don't want me, and b you have to you have to query certain
mhm.
ways to certain people who are gonna.
Yep.
I sent out 1,000 queries, and just
Mm,
crossed my fingers. Working in that world, I'm assuming that helped you later on when you were with your own book that we obviously people can see behind you. That's why you're here to promote. What did you see working for the literary agents? Were you kind of disillusioned? What was that like for you?
it wasn't disillusioning as much as it showed me just how difficult it is for a writer to break through. Seeing that even, and just to go back to something you said, like how you try, if you approach the literary world and they didn't want you, that's not true. Like
I don't
they
try. I take no offense. Do
I
not.
know, I know, but I will say that it's not that they don't want you, it's that you have to go through it a certain way and it's like there's an etiquette, but also seeing things from an agency side, I understand why that's necessary. They're called the gatekeepers, but also when you are inundated with hundreds and hundreds of writers who are, who want to make it, then, of course, like you need to have certain guidelines in place. And yes, it's important to understand like what agents are looking for, what kinds of work, and what kind of submission process they have. And I thought it was going to help me get a foot in the door. It helped me get my next publishing job at HarperCollins. It did not help me in terms of like actually being an aspiring writer, except for knowing how difficult it was going to be, and how even once you have the agent, because I was the person photocopying manuscripts and sending them out to editors, and I was calling editors and have you read this yet, and do you have any thoughts on it, that even once you have the agent, shopping it around to publishing houses and getting that offer, just you run such a gauntlet. So yeah, for me it was more like, wow, okay, if this is something I really want, it's not going to come easy at all. So let's think about, maybe I can like develop a career on this side of the business, because I do love books so much and I love, just being in that world.
What
So,
year is this?
oh, we're going back. This is like mid 2000s.
Very different world. I'm assuming a very different business model too. Had the Kindle even come out at that point?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I don't think so. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was the fact that I was photocopying
Yeah.
manuscripts
Yeah.
and that, oh my gosh, I had to print out emails for my boss and file them in a filing cabinet. Like it wasn't until the end of like near the end of the time I worked there that the agent's first assistant finally showed her how to use like folders in Outlook to file things, and just like I still don't totally trust it, so I'm still going to print out some of the emails. So yeah, just to date it to that
Yeah,
extent.
and the one thing I learned, and you correct me if I'm wrong, in my querying process, you visit some of these agencies' websites, and they
Mhm.
haven't been updated since 1999.
Yep.
I don't want I've never been in, I don't know it, so but from the outsider's point of view, it
Mhm.
doesn't seem like an antiquated business model, but at the same time, it does seem like this big sluggish monolith that just ugh, ugh.
It has definitely had to adapt, and just seeing the evolution of that, like from the time I worked for an agent to, however many 10, 15 years later when I was querying, and seeing how many agents are on Twitter, how many agents are using hashtags, and now there are like websites, manuscriptwishlist.com and querytracker.net, like how much technology has really made things easier, and how many agents have adopted, and also how many younger agents have come up and are coming up that are seeing, there are so many different ways you can find writers. So for me, it was really nice not to have to mail out the my manuscripts with a self-addressed stamped envelope, and be able to like have spreadsheets. And at the same time, the industry itself, I remember the agent that I was with before my current agent said, oh, if this was 10 or 15 years ago, I would have sold your book like so easily. It would have like instantly. So she goes, now it's harder than it's ever been. So yeah, so there are more opportunities, an easier way to kind of connect with people, but the gauntlet has gotten even rougher.
Harder than it's ever been to what? To publish
To
a book,
sell a book.
like publish a book that you wrote, or publish any book?
I think publish, oh gosh, maybe, well, I think publish a book that, just in general, but I guess that isn't kind of, a lot of publishers, they just want the big book, or to publish a book if you don't have an existing platform or name, or, just if you're just kind of starting out. And a lot of writers, it used to be that you could just have a book that was a mid-list book, or, that you just kind of rose up step by step by step, and many authors still do that. It's just a lot tougher now. And yeah, so there's a lot more expectation for kind of the debuts to make that big splash.
The publishing world seems to be very keen to hop on trends or what's hot.
Mm,
It seems like books that come out at certain times, whether it be, the political climate or
hmm
whatever. I know whenever I walk into whatever bookstore and the books that are being presented to me up front, it seems to be, yeah, I don't need to be specific about, but they seem to not chase trends, but
hmm
the literary world is very conscious of what is being pushed forward, I think, at times in history. You've been in it for so long, and you're saying, like, how hard it is nowadays to get
hmm
published. Can you talk about that maybe a little bit from like an insider's point of view of what books are really getting pushed out to the world and why?
Sure. And that's definitely a challenge for me, kind of when I decided to let's do this writing thing full time, and I was just writing and sending out my queries. And I wrote my first book like I finished it in less than a year, and was sending it out, and I was like, oh, I wrote another book in the second year, and then wrote Oona. Like, it was just kind of, everything seemed to be like at such a great rhythm. And then the reality of the publishing world, like when I was really trying to get my foot in the door, is that yeah, it's competitive, it's tough, but also, books are competing with television and video games and movies and so many different other forms of media. And book marketing has had to adapt to technology and become savvier. And any type of marketing is going to be based, it has to be based on something that's already familiar and successful. So of course, as soon as you have a huge hit book like Gone Girl, then all right, let's see how can we, kind of build off of this. And so, okay, let's have other books that have girl in the title. Let's have other, domestic thrillers. And so it's Gone Girl meets this, it's Gone Girl meets that. And I totally understand it. And as somebody who loved Gone Girl, I also am the audience for, those additional books. And it's certainly, if there's a movie or something that has a comp title that's something I already love, I'm going to gravitate to it. But I noticed with my own work, it wasn't as easily categorized. So, it wasn't the first book that the first novel that I wrote did not have a genre. Like, there was a little bit of psychological suspense, a little bit of mystery. There was kind of a dark romantic sort of twisted story. So because I couldn't classify it easily, it was much tougher to send out. Like, that agent sent it out to editors who specialized in literary fiction, women's fiction, mystery and suspense. I mean, everything, commercial fiction. So the fact that it couldn't really find its its place, that was a challenge, and that was definitely something that I worried about. And it just so happened, when I was writing my third book and then kind of shopping it around, initially, it was sort of a similar problem that, the format's unusual. It's, you know, every section of the book is a year of this woman's life, but she's a different age internally, externally. So, and it hops around decades, not just in time, but also in her life. It's quirky. But to my great fortune, after a year of querying and getting hundreds of rejections, time travel started to become a bigger trend in movies and TV. I mean, I feel like it's one of those things that is sort of, it's always there, but it started to emerge more. And one of the trends that I'm seeing now in fiction and by female authors specifically is stories that have excuse me, hang on one second.
Yeah, no worries.
One of the trends that I'm seeing now in fiction, especially written by women, is stories that have a speculative edge. So, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
okay.
I love the show Black Mirror,
Yeah, of course.
where
Yeah,
or
of
like the
course.
Twilight Zone. So
Yeah.
it's something that has that kind of like surreal twist, and it's not high fantasy or hard sci-fi, but it has that kind of surreal kind of edge to it, or or it's taking a sci-fi concept like time travel or cloning or this or that, and then but also making it very real and very much about kind of everyday situations and relationships, which is what I love, that kind of speculative fiction that's kind of rooted in reality. That's what Una is. And so seeing other stories, but I always felt like I love these stories and I want more of them, so I will write my own. So I love seeing that now there are more and more stories emerging from that. And the fact that this book kind of found an audience, I see it as just, there's definitely an element of luck there, an element of right place, right time, but that time, it took years to get to that
Yeah,
time.
no, of course. A couple of things. The first book, did it ever get published?
It got self-published.
See, that's what I did. So I
Yeah.
I got rejected. I received 73 official rejections last
Uh-huh.
year. And I'm like, I wrote a novella, a boxing novella set in Jersey
Uh-huh.
City. And I liked it. I thought it was good writing.
Mhm.
And to me, like, I'm not, if I do again, I'm from the music world.
Yeah.
I've printed 1,000 CDs that no one has ever bought. So
Uh-huh.
nobody was going to stop me from printing 250 of my own books that nobody would ever buy.
Mhm.
And I went on Reddit and I figured out how to self-publish that novella, and I did, and now you could buy it anywhere. So
Good for
I'm
you.
happy I got it out into the world, because now when I go to query my novel,
Mhm.
it's like there's something there. But you always hear about publishers, they don't like self-published authors. If you have a self-published book, they won't ever deal with you. You hear that a lot.
And that was definitely a word. Like I was torn
And why the
because,
fuck wouldn't I publish the book? I wrote it. It's good. I like it. Get it out there.
and you know what? I feel like if you've tried to do it the traditional way and you haven't been able to get away in, if you believe in your story, then you can build your audience. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't you? That's exactly how I felt with this book, that it's like, okay, well, the first book that I published, Asleep from Day, I was like, okay, it went to editors and it couldn't find that right home. So let me just at least kind of, it was very empowering
Yeah.
to do everything myself. And also it was such an education, it was such a crash course in production and marketing and publicity. And even though
Cover
I
design, editing,
oh, for
everything.
sure. And I
Everything.
worked at HarperCollins, so like I saw all of this stuff on the back end, but doing it myself,
Yeah.
it really made me realize why it takes an army
Yeah.
to bring a book out in the world and do it successfully, because I really wanted every element to be as high quality and really top notch. Like I was learning about so many different aspects, but I also realized that it's so time consuming and expensive and exhausting. And this is time that I am not writing.
Yeah.
So after the first novel that I self-published, I realized like that no, in an ideal scenario, like I'm glad I have a book out there. I'm glad I'm starting to build a readership, but I also know that there are people who are very, very good at what they do in the publishing industry and they specialize and they know the market. And I don't have that kind of bandwidth or brain power to like you just can't be a master of all of that. Like I just want to tell stories. And I just was very, very lucky to find a fabulous agent and then find a really wonderful publisher. So yeah, so now and it gives me a much greater sense of appreciation for what every single person behind the scenes does and just how much time and talent goes into it aside
Yeah.
from what I put on the page.
Yeah. I mean, to put it in perspective, I can remember researching, I had to buy my own ISBN
I did that.
barcodes
Hmm.
and having to, you never think about, you just don't think about these things.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I'm sure. Wait, your book has one. Yeah, so it's like
Oh yeah.
no one thinks about these things in the back of
Oh,
the book
my
that
my self-published book has one too. I was
exactly.
oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Just
And
every
I want to
detail.
go back to kind of what you were saying about not right place at the right time, but you saying how things kind of come into the public narrative. I've spent the
Mhm.
last 3.5 years trying to finish a novel about a fictional rock and roll band, and
Nice.
I'm at the end of it. I started another book as well, but I'm at the end of this novel, and I'm putting out some feelers, and everyone keeps hitting me up. They're like, "Have you read Utopia Avenue? Have you read
Yeah.
this book?" And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And now here I am, 3.5 years later, with a book about a fictional rock and roll band, and
Hmm.
it seems like publishers are only publishing books about fictional rock and roll bands. I'm
Oh,
like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
you know what's
Uh,
funny? I was thinking about an oral history for a musician, and I swear, like the following week, I saw the news about Daisy Jones and the Six, and I was like, "Oh
and
my
I'm like,
goodness!"
my book, it takes place in a different time,
Mhm.
different vibe. It's totally
Yep.
not like those books, but now I'm like having nightmares now. I'm like,
No, don't have nightmares. I think it's really interesting that we have this collective creative unconscious. So I love it because it makes me think like, okay, we are definitely there's a frequency that some of us all tune into and like that there are these ideas that will kind of leap from one brain to another brain and sometimes thematically we will kind of cover certain areas together but at the same time you have to trust that you have something to say and a way to say it that nobody else does.
well, I do because I toured in bands for 15, 20 years, and I'm writing it from that of the dude who
Right.
actually lived in the van. I'm not
Hmm.
sure if David Mitchell's ever actually played a gig.
Right.
But yeah, so it's all good. And I also have other projects I'm working on, but it's just as soon as you said that, I'm like, because it's my own inner dilemma I'm dealing with right now. I'm like, you got to be
Yeah.
kidding me.
No, you have to write it because you look at it this way, Utopia Avenue, that's set in the 60s, Daisy Jones in the 60s, the
Yeah.
70s,
Mine takes place in the late
whatever
90s.
music, oral history, or
Yeah.
whatever I'm going to write is probably going to be set in the 80s and or 90s.
Yeah.
So, there's so many different approaches that you can take with it
Yeah.
that, and that was the same thing with time travel that I never in a million years thought I would write a story about time travel. And when I was even vaguely entertaining the notion, I was thinking, like, I can only do it if I have a way in that is different, that I have a point of view, I
Sure.
have something to say, something to explore that is not just going to rehash what other time
Exactly.
travel
Yeah,
stories.
and I mean, everyone could say it's Spinal Tap was already made. So I mean, theoretically, the rock and roll thing's already been done because they created it. But again, what you're saying is there's always stories to be told within all these universes.
Always.
Um,
It's about the nuance, it's about the point of view, it's about the voice.
and well, it's about the voice. Again, I write much differently than David Mitchell.
Mhm.
And again, people who might not like him might like the story that I tell,
Right.
but they're the same person. They might be that same person who plays guitar or plays drums or whatever. Um, yeah, no, it's fascinating. So let's fast forward to the present, and now we
Okay.
are here with your brand new book, and this is your third book, right?
Well, it's
Second.
technically my traditionally published debut. I mean, it does get a little sticky. Like that was the only thing with self-publishing that,
What happened with the second book?
it's just filed away. I trunked
Got
it.
it. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
I
okay.
don't know what I'm going to do with it.
Yeah.
It's a little, it might just be a little too dark and wacky to, if I could possibly rewrite it as like a suspense novel, but I'm moving forward and just trying to work on new things. So yes, it's tricky. Like, and my first book is actually, I unpublished it just so that all of the energy and attention could focus on Oona. So readers that are
You
finding,
unpublished the self-published book?
I did.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's good for me to know in case I need to worry about that.
And I might republish it, down the line, but like this is the book that I know I put the most work into, that I feel like is the best thing
Of
that I've
course.
written. So that's where I want readers to kind of begin with me. um, so I'm sorry, what was your question?
Yeah, no. So, there was really no question, but now I will now have a thought, because it's interesting to unpublish the book. Again, I'm always going to come from the music world, and there's nothing worse than listening to an album you made 15 years ago and just cringing at just like, oh, like, the lyrics and whatever. As an author, I don't know. I feel like maybe I want that to stay out there, that first book. And maybe people can see the development, how you
Sure.
go and whatever.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought about it that way.
And I keep going back and forth. Yes, and I have kind of wanted to return to it, and it will. And I also have a lot of people asking me about it, because they're like, I can only find it on eBay for like $50, and please don't spend $50 for this book on eBay.
Do publishers, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm forgetting this, and I'm gonna always pronounce his name wrong. Chuck Palahniuk, however you say his
Chuck
last name.
Palahniuk, you were close.
Didn't they republish his first book that was never published after he became success? Do publishers ever do that?
Oh, that happens all the time.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean with Stephen King, he published under a pen name, and yeah. So once you become, kind of big, and once you have a huge readership,
They'll
that
throw that shit
they're
out
just
there.
clamoring for everything. Yeah, yeah. But in my case, I have new ideas and new stories that I'm developing, and and so my editor said, like, let's focus, like, let's move forward. And to be perfectly honest, with this first book, like, I am proud of it, and I did work super, super hard on it. And I worked with professional editors and copy editors, and so it's not that I just wrote this and it's been revised dozens and dozens of times. And but it's the sort of thing where if I kind of brought it back out in the world, I know I'd want to take another look at it and tinker with it just to give it that one more polish.
Sure.
And I know that I couldn't just do something like that in 5 minutes, that's something I'd really have to set aside, an amount of time. I don't like to do something unless I can be obsessively thorough about it. And honestly, that creative energy is something I want to put towards, what I'm currently working on, future projects. So it'll find its time. But for now, I feel like I have all of this exciting new material to focus on.
We love it. Margarita, this has been an absolute pleasure. For people who can see the podcast, the new book is called Oona Out of Order. And I do love, I'm a big fan of the cover design. It kind of reminds me of AJ Finn, the woman in the window.
Yes.
You know the cover of that, how it's the blinds, but the one blind's kind of like peeking down with the letters, and as someone's like peeking through.
Yes.
I kind of got that vibe. I dig the cover art for sure.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, no, most definitely.
It's paperback, so it's available now in all formats.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to the last two questions I always ask.
Mm-hmm.
First off, you have any social media presence? Do you do Twitter, Instagram? Where can people follow and find you?
Yes, I'm not always active. I have phases where I'm very active and then kind of quiet. So I can be a little sporadic, but they can find me. I'm on Facebook. I have an author page, Margarita Montimore. And then my handle for most social media is Damiella, DAMIELLA. I've been using that handle since I was 18 years old, since the AOL days. So I've just snatched it up every time there's a new social media platform. I reserve that immediately.
Fair enough.
So yeah, but I would say Twitter and Instagram, I am fairly fairly active on. And my website's montimore.com. And yeah, I love connecting with readers, and this is so fun. It was so great talking to you.
Oh yeah, no. One more question. You
Sure.
are a New York, New Jersey gal.
Mhm.
What bookstores do you like to rep? Where should people be buying your books?
Oh my goodness. I well, I The Strand is one of my all-time favorite
Never heard
bookstores
of it.
of all time. And I was so, during the pandemic, I saw that they were kind of going through a rocky period, and I'm so glad that that readers have come together and continue to support them and order from them. So I would say, yeah, bookshop.org is fantastic in the way that it has rallied independent booksellers. I think that's a great way, if you don't have a local bookstore, just a great way to still support independent bookstores and find, you can order the book online that way. So yeah,
We got to
really.
give some love to some Jersey bookstores. We got to. What's the bookstore in Montclair?
Oh gosh.
I don't know what
Um,
part of Jersey you're in. God,
I'm
well,
in
I've
South Jersey.
you're in South Jersey.
Yes,
Oy
yes.
vey.
Oh, I know, I know. We don't.
Oy vey. Yeah.
Hold on. Oh my gosh. This
Yeah.
is
Well, that's all good.
what
We
is
can
the
give shout outs later.
I know, I know. I'm sorry. Yeah, because where literally where I am. I mean, there's a really cute bookstore in Haddonfield.
Okay, Haddonfield. Man, I haven't heard that name in a while. I mean, South Jersey to me was just Atlantic City, Philadelphia. Like that was the
Yeah,
only times I dated a girl who went to Monmouth, but other than that, my South Jersey is limited.
yeah. And we're like 20 minutes outside of Philly, but yeah. So
Yeah,
there's a cute store in Haddonfield called Inkwood. Um,
great.
yeah. So
Love it.
and yeah, there's a and I mean, yeah, I'd
We'll give you
have to.
shout outs. No worry. Margarita, this
Yeah.
has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk.
Thank you so much. This was
Yeah.
so fun. And I hope you don't mind if I possibly pick your brain down the line, because I'm gonna need to do some research for a later project about music and touring and all of that. And
I would
you
be the
sound
man to
like
talk to. Trust me
you are
about
the
that.
expert.
Would love
So
to. Would love to. Look, nothing better.
fantastic.
All
Well,
right.
thank you
Awesome.
again.
Enjoy the rest of your day then.
You too. Take care. This was so fun.
Yeah.
Bye.
Later.